In Module 10, we're going to look at rendering a Genero ASCII report in compatibility mode using Genero Report Writer 2.21. Prior to the introduction of Genero Report Writer, most reports were written using BDL, and they produced ASCII reports. As such, you may already have ASCII reports that you now want to send through the Genero Report engine so that you can output them in PDF or output them as an image or output them as SVG. By the time you're done with this module, you're going to be able to render an existing ASCII report in compatibility mode, meaning sending it through the Genero Report engine, resulting in a PDF, an SVG, or an image file, any of the types of output that's allowed. You could also send it to a printer, but you could do that previously. You're also going to be able to transform an existing ASCII report into an XML data stream. So it doesn't necessarily have to go to an output. It can take that existing ASCII report and turn it into the XML data stream that can then be input into Genero Report Writer. Let me quickly just discuss the report types and terminology so that we know we're talking about the same thing. So when we talk about an ASCII report running without GRE, this is the ASCII report you would have written in the port proc of your old BDL application. That's known as an ASCII report, or we're going to call it a Genero ASCII report. Now, if you take that ASCII report and you're running it through Report Writer, you're running it in graphical mode, we're going to call that an ASCII report rendered in compatibility mode. And if you're running a graphical report that's based on a 4RP file, the 4RP file that you've created within Report Designer, from a Report Writer perspective, that's just known as a report. What do you do if you have an ASCII report that you want to render in compatibility mode? So you want to render it using the Genero Report engine. Well, at a minimum, there's going to be 4 lines of code that's needed. And for many reports, this is all that's going to be needed. You're going to define your handler om.sax document handler, and then you're going to say if FGL report load current settings, and you're going to pass in null. So you're not passing in a 4RP file, you're passing in null. If FGL report load current settings null, then you're going to let your handler equal to FGL report commit current settings, and then you'll end if. So in order to do this, you're still going to call the load current settings load and commit. It's just you're not going to specify a 4RP file. Instead, you're going to send in null. You're going to add this code to your main module in an existing BDL application. And just by adding this code, it's now going to be rendered by the report engine, and it's going to be output to the default output device. Let's take a quick look at this. So in my presentation project workspace, I've added another node called ASCII report, another application node. And inside of this node, I've added the file that's included with the BDL tutorial about reports. So I've added my custreports.4gl. I've made the ASCII report my default application. So when I execute this report, I can see that it's executing, and you can see the report is brought up using the GDC. This is how reports are displayed when you send it using the ASCII reporting within Genero BDL. Now, what happens if I want to go and I want this report to run through Report Engine? Well, I said you had to have 4 lines. So let's just take a look at them here. So I add my define handler om.sax document handler. I then have my if FGL report load current settings, and I pass in null instead of passing in a 4RP file. Then I want to let the handler equal to FGL report commit current settings, and then I'll end if. I can go ahead and save these changes. Let me execute this. When we execute it, you'll notice at the bottom it says that it's not able to find report load current settings and not able to find report commit current settings. And that's because I need to add the library. So I go into my external dependencies. I want to add my libgre.42x. When I save this, I can go ahead and execute it. And this time it's going to find those. It's going to run the report, and it displays the report inside of Report Viewer. If I wanted to include some error handling, I could include my if handler is null, then I exit the program. In other words, if this is unsuccessful, let me just get out of the program. That adds some quick error handling. I can save my changes. I can run it again. As you can see, I'll get report 2. However, it didn't change how that report was output. Now, just as we had in earlier modules, wherever we have a load current setting and then a commit current setting between those 2 functions, I'm allowed to go and call my FGL report select device and call my FGL report select preview. So just because I'm not using a 4RP file doesn't mean that I can't also include these. So if I want to output to PDF and I wanted to preview first, I would just go and add those to my application. So if I go back into Studio, I can call my FGL report select device and send it to PDF. For example, I can call FGL report select preview and set it to true. Now if I save my changes and I execute them, it still produces the report, but it produces it as a PDF. If you want to change the default page size or the default page margins, you can go ahead and add the FGL report configure page size or the FGL report set page margins functions in between the loading of the current settings and the committing of the current settings. You'll see that when you're entering in the page size, you're using terms such as letter width or letter length. These terms are defined inside of your documentation in a section on dimensions. So if you want more information about what the possible valid values are there, go and look in your online documentation. And let's go there now for configure page size. I can go inside of my reference. I go into my reporting API. This is going to be a page function, and I want to find configure page size. I go to configure page size, and what you can see is there's a link called Dimension Resolver. Underneath Dimension Resolver, we have a table of available paper format abbreviations, and here is where I would go to identify something such as a letter. So there's letter width. That means I could have also used NA letter width. I could have used note width. All of them would have formatted it for a letter page size. The margins, I could have gone to that same chart. You can find that you can list things in inches and centimeter and pica in points. That same chart at the top gives me all of the different dimensions I could use when setting up my page margins. Let me go back into my report itself. I'll comment out my previous two entries and let me uncomment these two lines. So now I'm configuring the page size to be letter width and letter length. I'm setting my page margins to be 0.5 inches all around on each margin. We can save these changes, run our report, it gets rebuilt, it executes, and now my report is brought up with 0.5 inch margin all the way around, and it's showing it on a letter page size. There's a third function out there that you can use when you're outputting an ASCII report in compatibility mode, and that's the FGL report configure compatibility output function. When you use this function, you're going to be specifying things such as the page width, you'll specify the font name, you specify the fidelity. Do you want the preview to look exactly as it's going to look when it outputs it to the report? It's true or false, it's a Boolean. You can also specify a report name, you can specify a report category, and you can specify the URL, the absolute URL for any image that you may be placing in the background. If you're using any of these latter things, the report name or the report category or the system if, that means that you're using some of the functionality that we have inside that is documented inside of custom compat.4gl, which is located in your greader/src/overloadables directory. Go ahead, and if you want to know more about these kind of options, these are more advanced options, I would encourage you to go and locate that custom compat.4gl file and read through the comments within that file itself. But to show you how that this does work, I'm going to go ahead and go back to Studio. I'm going to replace what we have up here now with this new function. I've gone ahead and I've copied this function, so let me just paste it in, but I'm going to call my FGL report configure compatibility output. I'm going to set the width to 80, the font to Courier New. I'm going to set the fidelity to true. And you'll notice that if I don't want to pass in a value, I can just pass in null. So I'll pass in null, null, null for the last three. Let me save these changes and execute my report. It compiles and it executes. And as you can see, the output has changed so that it's treating a page as being 80 across instead of 132 across. It's using Courier New as the font, and it's giving me a better display for within my report viewer.